Welcome to everyone to a new video. Now we're coming ever so close to having access to DMZ and Warzone 2. Apparently this coming Wednesday we have an event where certain creators will be invited to test it out early. Although I'm not necessarily a fan of watching those things early because I kind of like the surprise, it is still a good way to gauge and understand sort of what's going to be happening when these two game modes come. So with that said, as we're working through our multiplayer space and grind, I bet more than one of you still feels a bit confused with our current attachment and tuning gunsmith system. So today I wanted to give you some clarity on what the best attachment types are in the gunsmith, some subtle details you want to understand about the vague stats we have available, and how you can start using the tuning option to choose the best attachments and how not to ruin your class setups. So I spent about 4 hours testing attachments and was able to gather some answers and unfortunately some questions as well. But first, let's start with the title of this video. Is aiming stability superior over recoil control? And well, after testing 5 sets of a variety of weapons, it seemed building weapons out for recoil control did provide better results in a majority of cases. Now, this might not be a surprise as we are stacking recoil control attachments. However, it wasn't a complete victory for recoil control. Let me show you the results for the testing on, for example, the Icarus and the Rap H. It showed that the aiming stability builds gave a nice consistent pattern, and once you tried the recoil control build, it created these curves in the pattern due to the vertical control trying to shrink the overall pattern. Now, if you would have to choose between these two, which one would you prefer? Let me know in the comments below, but probably the aiming stability build would be better because it's more consistent in its pattern. Now, this doesn't mean stacking recoil control attachments is inherently a bad idea. However, certain attachments are what create this weird situation. In this case, changing our underbarrel for one that didn't focus on recoil control was a great option, as we can see how smoother the pattern was with a different underbarrel. But the journey to mastering a weapon build isn't always stacking the best attachments, as sometimes not using a certain type of attachment can lead to a prettier pattern. Like in this case, where we tested the Icarus and Rap H without an underbarrel, and it gave an even more consistent pattern than a quote-unquote optimized underbarrel choice, so an underbarrel that gave you recoil control, right? Now, it is worth mentioning that there was quite some tuning necessary to get to this point, and even more testing to understand a little more of this new tuning feature. And we discovered 4 things as we went through this process. The first one being is that tuning option doesn't always directly let you tune the benefits of the attachments. Sometimes it lets you reduce the negatives of it, and sometimes it lets you influence a characteristic that wasn't even stated as a pro or con. So that's something to keep in mind and something that you can discover as you select an attachment and then go to tune it, right? The second thing we noticed was that the tuning system can be used to identify how much a given attachment is affecting the weapon. So it can be a more accurate way of comparing between attachments that seem to have the exact benefits, like those 3 muzzles, for example, that state they all control horizontal and vertical recoil. So this is a great way to see which one is actually influencing that category more than the other. Now, speaking of the pros and cons, did you know that the amount of benefit or loss you are getting from that attachment is determined by its position in the list of pros and cons? So for example, whatever is on the top of the list as the pro or con is what's giving you more benefits or causing more issues for that attachment. And most of the time it tends to be the main attachment that will be available to be tuned when you go to the tuning option. Now, comment down below if you learned something new with this video already, and maybe take a moment to like the video if you are learning a lot more from Modern Warfare 2's Gunsmith. But alright, moving into the third thing we discovered is that apparently hip fire control, despite seemingly meaning it helps your recoil when shooting from the hip, is actually influencing the ADS recoil as well. And this is especially important when picking an underbarrel, because Exclusive Ace did a video breaking down what each type of recoil meant, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below. But the reason I mentioned this video is because recoil steadiness is basically what you mainly want to pick if you're looking to get an overall recoil benefit. And this specific type of recoil control is present in the underbarrels that look like a Merc foregrip, which if you select and tune, it won't give you recoil control as an option to tune. It'll give you hip recoil control, and that can definitely be a little bit confusing if you want to pick one of these for your long range setups, because then you're going to be thinking, you know, but I don't want any hip fire control, I want just regular recoil control. But this specific attachment or this specific name does mean or does influence recoil control to some degree based on the testing. Now, For the fourth and last detail, you want to keep in mind when tuning an attachment how much you slide it, as we did notice that some attachments reached its maximum noticeable potential before sliding it all the way, and instead of actually getting any benefit from sliding all the way, you're just ruining the opposite trait for the sake of a negligible or non-existent benefit. So as you move your sliders, try to notice when the triangle peaks and stop sliding at that point, and you will be able to maximize on gaining all the goodies and staying away from the baddies. But all jokes aside, it is important to keep in mind these 4 details because they've really helped pretty much shed some crucial light in what we might expect from Warzone 2 and DMZ, because we might be wanting to build these for long range instead of just closed 6v6 maps. Now, of course, take this with a grain of salt, as we don't really know what exactly the changes will be in DMZ and Modern Warfare 2. Maybe they'll change the attachment characteristics a little, maybe they'll change the overall recoil behavior of the weapons, maybe even reduce the visual kick that these weapons have, which is pretty heavy, I might say. But with this rather basic knowledge, I was able to sort of speed run building an assault rifle and LMG for long range, and I'll show you the patterns without much min-maxing or overthinking. This was just basically using these 4 rules to identify what the best attachments were and how they kind of mingle together, right? Now, after seeing this, I urge you to take note of these 4 things and stick around the channel as I put in the time to make sure you know how to interpret and enjoy building your favorite weapons, as well as have much more in-depth videos coming to help you with your camo grinding, best class setups, and any other relevant information we all might need to be successful in DMZ and Warzone 2. So, with that said, I thank you truly for clicking on today's video, and if you liked it, consider supporting it by sharing it with a friend and maybe subscribing to the channel, because it is free for you and it really helps me out a ton. I already have a couple of really helpful videos you can check out, so I'll let you pick one at the end of this video. But with nothing else left to say, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and through it all, I hope you always remember: Sauce Time Gaming.